You are listening to the Business Emergency Room. If you are a leader or an entrepreneur facing chaos and looking for remedies to master it, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Maartje van Krieken. Let's triage the turmoil. Hey, thanks for tuning back in. Glad you're here. Today in this episode, we're going to talk about my business and how I work one last time, specifically about the reasons people tend to not choose and engage external help or some of the other hurdles you might see on your path. So I was planning to bring up the main comments I hear often from people when, figuring out if they want to work with a consultant or not and address those. So the first one to start with is that I think it's very important that you have a click with the person that you work with. You don't have to be the same. You don't have to like the same things. But if you're going to bring somebody into your house and into your business and into your team, then you need to be able and willing to take some comments from the person that you're hiring, right? So if my communication style or other things, my mannerisms or other things I do, don't work for you, then I might not be the person for you. And that's okay. That's what this beautiful life is made up of, all these different people, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So question number one is, when you engage somebody, does it work? Does it click? Can I actually work with that person? That's usually the easiest question to answer, right? Then I often hear comments around money and unlimited scopes, particularly in management consulting and consultants sticking around forever. Well, I think the nature of the business and my work is a little different because I specifically operate in this space, in that first space where things are clearly not right, but it's also not entirely clear what needs to happen and what kind of help is needed. And as I explained to you in episode number 2, I typically work with very short initial contracts doing diagnostics and triage. And if nothing else, we can part ways after that, and you have at least diagnostics, at least some idea on where you're at and where I see that, things should maybe be addressed. And you've made some insights and had a fresh pair of eyes look at your situation. And if that's the point where you choose to leave it, I don't think you've lost anything. Second, we also talked about a phase 2. I typically stay around then to also help source further support. So I think it's actually important to, if it's not your forte or something that you're used to have some help draft contracts and scopes that you're going to outsource, or even put some structure around the scopes that are special project or improvement scopes that you're going to run internally, to make sure that you're pragmatic and realistic, and also that you, if you outsource the scope, that you put it with the right type of companies and people, and that you negotiate the right stopgaps around the contractual arrangements, right? So that you are set up in a way that it's clear what's going to get delivered, that what is agreed as a rate or a price for a scope like that or for that caliber of people actually makes sense, that you're not hiring somebody with way more overpaying for capability you don't quite need, or paying and then not getting quite the capability you need, and hence not actually solving your problem. So that's the type of work I do a lot for my clients. I have a very diverse and broad network, and I don't bluff. That's my one cardinal rule. Anybody who's ever worked for me will tell you that that's something I always said to my teams. If you want to have a go at trying something or doing something, go ahead. But bluffing is inexcusable. If you know that something is really way out of your depth in terms of expertise or skills, then you need to put up your hand and we need to place it with the person who's actually the specialist in that, because or better placed at least to do the work than you, because otherwise it could be dangerous. And you're also wasting everybody's time, right? Doing a stretch assignment and bluffing are really two very different things. And I think we all deep down know what they are. So if I work with you and I realize that I don't have all the capacities or the skills or the answers to help you out, I will also tell you that and refer you to the appropriate people. The other way around, if we're working well together and out of comfort, you're like, but can you not do it? And I believe you could get a much cheaper resource to do the work for you just as well, I will tell you. And yes, unfortunately, I have way too many peers who stick around longer than they maybe should, who might maybe want a break from doing business development and stick around on a contract maybe longer than is necessary. I know I'm not one of those. I had a client where the interim CEO actually came from one of the biggest consulting houses in the world. And when I told him that I was going to go, right, that my work was done, he said, "Oh, great. So you have something else lined up. What are you going to do?" And actually, it was right before Christmas. We just moved and I didn't have something else lined up. So I told him, I said, "Oh, I don't know. In the new year, we'll see." And he looked at me a little puzzled. He said, "So why are you going then?" I said, "My job's done, right? We're finished. There was an interim manager put in place on the organization where the work was being done. We banked the biggest fires. There was a reasonable level of calm restored, and there was capability and capacity internally to push through the scopes and projects that needed doing. And yeah, there was bits and pieces of work that I could continue to hang on to and be involved in, but that's not how I operate, and that's not what I wanted to do. And so I said, that's too many. At some point, it's also too many cooks in the kitchen or chefs in the kitchen. Time to go." And he laughed really hard. And he said to me that I was the one and only and first ever consultant he met who left by their own accord. So yeah, I know for a fact that's me. I also know for a fact that I'm not the only one. And I hope that you all mainly meet and get to work with consultants who stick around as long as it makes sense and is needed. But yeah, I'm also care about making sure that you get the third-party support that operates like that. And yeah, that we also set up your deals and your contracts and your scopes in a manner that you have the levers to determine whether it's time to let go and it's done, or whether somebody needs to stick around a little longer. I talked also a little bit already in the second episode that for solopreneurs or business owners starting out and still growing, they could use the caliber of support that I provide or from some of my peers, because that's what their business needs. But at the same time, it's at a price point that you maybe can't quite afford yet with the way your business operates or where it is in its life cycle. And yeah, I discussed with you that in those situations, I would work with you initially one-on-one to do the diagnostics and the triage, but we could convert to some ad hoc office hours setup so that you can reach out for implementation support as and when needed at a more affordable price point, right? And yes, in some of these cases, I might also refer you to somebody else if you need somebody really full-time in there to help out. But in those situations, typically what you're looking for is not the consulting side of things, but really more the interim management side of things. Yeah, and then you're paying for a resource, right? So then you should be able to afford the salary. But yeah, interim management can also come at a different price point. So if that's what you need, then we can find the right resource to fill those gaps and find a solution that works. Yeah, we talked also already a little bit, but I want to elaborate a bit more about it on scope. I think it's important to agree with a third party or with the help you hire what is in and what's not in. But of course, I advertise myself saying I come in at a point that you don't quite know yet what needs to happen. That's the whole point of bringing me in. There's still things we should agree on, right? There is, we could have no-go areas in terms of topics. We can agree a few hard and fast rules around communication, how you want to introduce me to your organization. Maybe you want to ring fence certain parts or departments. Maybe there are some other sensitive issues that are also at play in the organization that I then maybe need to know about. But once you've informed me about them, that sits somewhere else or that's left to others. Whatever it is, I do think it's important to be transparent and be clear. Be clear also how, if you're my main focal point, be clear how you want to be kept in the loop. If there are specific things that you need to be able to stay on top of things or that are truly your way of working, then let's have that conversation, right? Because it's important that we collaborate in a way that you can hear and absorb, and that I can also hear and absorb what you're telling me. And that, yeah, so if we do that in the formats and the style that is preferential to you, then that should help typically. So yeah, be open and be transparent. I'll be open and transparent. I'm Dutch. I don't really know any other way. People say the Dutch are also blunt. I don't really know if it's blunt. I think culturally it's more about saying what it is, right? And yeah, I think in the situations that I would operate with you, that's what these situations need. We don't have to make a bigger drama out of things, but there is no sense in making things sound better than they are. I do believe, though, that there is a way to look at situations more positively or constructively, and that I'm a big proponent of, because I do believe when we're in an emergency or chaos situation or in turmoil and emotions are running high, energy is really low. And so I can at times be a little forceful in the way we talk about things, meaning that sometimes you need to talk about the scars a little bit, but then we also need to start moving on to the things that we can actually change and influence. And looking back too much is not always helpful. So there's this saying, don't look where you fell, but where you tripped, right? So let's focus on some of the lead up, specifically if we think that there is causes there that need fixing to move forward. But let's also agree that there is water under the bridge, right? And figure out a way how to agree and really leave that behind us. So yeah, I won't paint you rosy pictures. I might steer somewhat forcefully sometimes in the way of communicating and the way we discuss things, and try to figure out what we believe is our common truth, right? And or where the disagreements or the misalignments are there in support of moving forward and not moving back very much. Yeah, I do agree and provide clear deliverables. So you will know if you go into a contractual arrangement with me what it is that you should have at the end of it. I think that is normal operations. And I do have an accreditation in HR, so I know enough about HR to be aware of issues around privacy and personal management and other HR aspects that are critical in these situations. I'm also an accredited coach. So there's techniques like from coaching that come into the work. And I do think it can be helpful when you engage a consultant to check for some of these accreditations, because one coach or one consultant is not the other. So depending on what your situation needs, accreditations are a good way sometimes to assess the level of experience or the value of the experience that people bring to the table. And people should always be happy to share what they have or don't have, because if they're not the right person for the situation, that's not good for anybody there. Yeah. And last but not least, I'm a one-woman show. So yeah, sometimes I hear people say, well, but then I would work with you if I go to a big consulting house, then I get the whole apparatus. Yeah, if you go with a big consulting house, you get the whole apparatus, but chances that as a smaller business, you get the A team. Are if you're not the big multinationals with the big corporate contracts and the repeat business, you typically don't get the A team. They also need to train their graduates and their younger staff, so you pay for that, right? You either pay for that by them putting more hours onto your scope, or by them giving your scope to somebody for whom it's their first or their stretch assignment. And I am a referrer. I'm a network builder. I love people. I love hanging out with people. I love the type of work I do. So my personal time, I also talk shop lots because my peers are my friends. And so I have a high caliber network. And I'm also one of these people who's good at finding out. So yes, I'm a one-woman show, but I already told you that if I'm not the right person for you, I wouldn't take on the work. And I can help you find the right people for you, or bring in the resources for the missing pieces in terms of expertise or specialty support that we might need. And if you have somebody, it doesn't have to be my person, but we can close those gaps. And I can make my own arrangements with some of these people to also just get access to that kind of expertise for a few hours here or there. That is totally possible, and that's totally how it works in this network, in these networks. And then last but not least, once we're done, yes, I may I choose sometimes to exit, as you've heard, when I think I'm done. My main client within the organization was also totally okay with that, right? This was not me saying, hey, I'm bowing out now. I delivered what I said I would deliver. And yeah, the team said, I think we can do this. So I do typically stay in touch with people and with organizations, with some more than others. Sometimes there's follow-up, sometimes there isn't, whatever the situation needs. I am totally okay if somewhere down the line you've got questions and you're just calling me to say, hey, we're re-looking at this project, change the scope, and now we're looking back at what you told us or what you talked about with us, and can you talk us through it one more time? Or hey, do you know somebody for this or that, because you know what we're after, and that kind of stuff. Once you're in my network, you're in my network. And yeah, I love hearing from you. I love help celebrate the successes with the people I work with. And so if you want to stay in touch, we stay in touch. If that's not your thing, also totally fine. So yeah, I think I addressed some of the main things that I sometimes hear from people when they're considering if they want to work with a consultant. So I think in this case, with short-term contracts and very specific scopes, money is not really the excuse. And yeah, schedules and deadlines and deliverables need to be agreed. You and I, and not just with me, but with any consulting or support contract you have, you need to have clear scopes and have clear arrangements for all sides to end and to start these things, so that you can pull the trigger on those things when you want to or need to. And yeah, you need to have somewhat of a click and believe that somebody is the right person. And if you can't put it into words, but it doesn't feel right, then that's also totally fine, right? Move on to something else. And last but not least, the main thing from my side that I always hope with my clients is, and which hence I talk quite a lot about in some of my social media posts, etc., is that what I see is that many of my clients ultimately say that they wish that they did something sooner. Asking for help is so hard, and we all have our egos, and we don't like acknowledging that we have egos. So maybe it's pride. Maybe it also is our fear of failure. And yeah, it's the little voices in the back of our heads. We think we can do it. We think we can manage. We think we should be able to manage. Yes, we're all capable. And I believe that each and every one of you is more than qualified for your job, and there is so much you can do. You can do anything. The challenge is you cannot do everything, and you cannot sometimes control how things come at you, right? It's like the weather or a storm. Sometimes you're just a little bit unlucky. That this thing slows down, that one speeds up, and then there's an unexpected external factor that piles on top of it. And suddenly everything is out of whack or everything is out of sync. Yes, sometimes you don't realize that, till it's kind of late, that you're not in a good space. That's normal, right? But I do hope that when you realize you are not in a good space, that you stick up your hand and say, hey, I could use that external infusion of energy and insight, because once you know and you wait, you're just wasting time and money. And effectively, you're better off spending then that money with somebody like me to get out of the hole quicker and be back to being successful and productive than waiting. Because waiting and doing nothing gets you nowhere, right? That's not going to get you out of the hole. So yeah, I hope, and I've made it my mission to try and remind people to stick up their hand a little sooner and say, hey, actually, I could use a little help. And if we learn to do it sooner, then we're out quicker. We feel better sooner, and the team will feel better sooner. And also, if we start to recognize the signs a little sooner and figure out to deploy help more systemically a little quicker, then our business becomes more resilient, right? And we start seeing the symptoms quicker. Then we get on this path where we can address some of these symptoms earlier ourselves, and hence maybe get to the point that you need less and less help. Especially if your business is growing or changing drastically, it's normal that the skill set or the capacity you have at times is just out of sync with what goes on. It's not you, it's not anyone. It's just the growing and changing pains that happen, right? So, all right, that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in, and talk to you next week with a good scar story. Thank you. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. For more remedies, additional episodes, and tools to recover from business chaos, visit thebusinessemergencyroom.com. If you need tailored support to find your rhythm in chaos, visit thechaosgamesconsulting.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. My team and I will ensure you get the right help quickly. Until next time.